And welcome to Mad Markets. Of course, Paul Theron, thank you so very much for joining us. BHP Bulletin, slightly disappointing, would you say, or not?
How can you ask me the question like that? My favorite stock, slightly disappointing.
Well, it did come under pressure and it didn't come out with most expectations.
So the earnings were slightly down.
Yeah.
But I mean, the more important question I want to ask is,
yes,
14 Rand something of earnings, half year for South Africa, so double that. Let's say they're looking at like 28 Rands a share of earnings. And the question then comes, why does the share price only trade at 260 Rand? Why? Because in the world we live in, even big companies like this with a great customer base, with products that everybody knows China needs and all of that, 10 PE, that's all it gets. And why? Again, because it's, you know, people are worried about...
Yeah, but we're still seeing this with Anglo-American, we're seeing it in the overall resource space. So this has been the argument that we will see a movement from the industrials into the resource sector this year because of valuations.
So people are thinking back still to the great crisis and worried that, you know, earnings are not sustainable. The other thing I think, though, that is a major issue for BHP Billiton and for Marius Klopper, somebody's got to ask him this question is, why does Freeport-McMoran, which is the largest resource company in the S&P 500, consistently trade at a high forward PE? Why? Because it's an American company. And the Americans only want to buy shares in companies that are American and domiciled in America. So I think it's time for them to pack up the head office in Melbourne and move to New York City and announce that they are henceforth an American company. And then all the shareholders like me will make much more money.
So then moving on to a South African company, Pick n Pay, Nick Badminton resigning.
Yes, two people got fired today.
Years.
One is Nick Badminton, the other was Sasha Martinengo from Radio 5. I'm not quite sure which one I feel less disappointed by.
Sorry, when you say fired, obviously they both resigned.
Well, you know,
because
they say people resign in this day and age, but, you know, when people resign normally in the corporate world when they're lower than 50 years old and they have massive salaries and a high profile, my only instinct is to say, well, they got fired. So my net conclusion is that I'm not very sorry about either of them. I generally think younger people are better in all respects, in all jobs.
Paul, you're not looking too young to me. You should be careful what you say.
You are a young person. I'm
yes, but I'm getting older.
You know,
so, the ECB, Europe, Eurozone, Greece, I'm tired of talking about it, but it's still important.
This story is going to kill you. There's a guy who's head of open market operations at the ECB. His surname is Papadia. I don't know what country he comes from. But today, in a press conference, speaking in probably his third language in English, he said that Europe does not need a bazooka because it has got an effective beaver. So now I'm thinking, right, in monetary policy, we don't need bazookas anymore. What we need now are effective beavers. He meant this in the context of saying, you know, they have like, you know, beavers, they build like wooden islands in the stream. So then I got to thinking that there are many respects in which the world would be much better off if we had fewer bazookas and more effective beavers, Eleni.
So what about Ben Bernanke last night and just still being worried about unemployment?
Yeah, and he pointed out correctly.
Yes.
As the,
should he be worried? Because, I mean, it's looking better.
Yes, look, the trend is definitely better, but he pointed out correctly, I think, that 8.3% is not the real unemployment rate because there are all these discouraged workers and people that are out of the workforce.
Are they finally admitting to the fact that it's
yes, they're finally admitting the point that many people have been making, and I don't know what the White House would be thinking about this. They're probably not that happy because, of course, Barack Obama wants to get re-elected and the employment situation needs to look as strong as possible.
And Ben Bernanke needs a reason to keep rates at ultra-low levels and to ensure that there's more stimulus in the market. So the only way he could do that is still saying unemployment is a very big problem.
Look, as far as he's concerned, he's basically signaled that they're going to keep rates at a very low level for the rest of history. But I think what we're going to find quite soon is that the US economy picks up and then interest rates need to go back to normal. The final point on my agenda here is the State of the Nation address tomorrow. We're all waiting with bated breath to see what President Jacob Zuma comes up with. It's going to be a huge day tomorrow. 7 p.m.
Yes, isn't it?
I thought it was during the workday. Oh, then I'm not watching. I'm sorry. It's out.
Thank you so much, Paul Theron, for joining us for Mad Markets.